Welcome to the Leader to Leader podcast, sponsored by the StarQuest Group. I'm Tom Athenauer, your host, and today I have as my guest Jon Torpy, President and General Manager of Epiroc USA, which is a global manufacturer and services company for the mining, construction, and infrastructure industries. Jon took over as President and GM in May of 2019. And has been leading a remarkable transformation, a cultural transformation within the company. They have been one of the top performing Epiroc companies worldwide, and were recognized as one of the best places to work by USA Today. And so today we're going to be talking about that culture transformation, and we're going to be spending some time talking about a core component that has been part of this shift called freedom with accountability. So we're going to unpack that concept and learn a little bit more about what that actually looks like and what impact that has had on the organization. So welcome, Jon.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Pleasure to be here.
Would you mind sharing just a little bit more about the context, and then we can talk a little bit about what you have been able to accomplish with your leadership team and your efforts in this culture transformation. So a little bit about the context.
Sure. So, as you said, in May 2019, I took over as the president and general manager of Epiroc USA, which is the customer-facing company for Epiroc in the US. And so our goal, our job is to take care of our customers, to sell our products, and everything we do is customer-facing. And when I took this role over, our CEO, we had done some new things with the company, and we had a new CEO. And she and my boss, who reports to the CEO, basically said, "Hey, we think there's a better way to get results out of this company." Not that the company was underperforming at all; it was actually performing by a lot of standards very well. But they said, "We think there's more." And they actually empowered me to be pretty innovative in what I wanted to go after and try to do with the company to try to get more out of it. And so I had a lot of latitude. I had empowerment from my boss and from the CEO, and I had a clear mission, which was try to grow the company even more than it's been able to before, but in a way that delivers sustainable, profitable growth for the future. So it was both a short-term and a long-term mission in terms of what I was asked to do with this company. And in the role as president and general manager, and so it's these roles within our company, you basically look after everything. And so HR, finance, sales, service, operations. So you do have the opportunity to be pretty entrepreneurial in the approach with this type of a company as well, with this type of role in our company.
Yeah, I'm curious, Jon. You know, we have this saying, and you're well aware of it, it's kind of leading with vision and then inspiring with action. Did you have an idea? Did you have a picture of what you were trying to create when you went into this? Because you had a mandate, a mission that you were challenged with. Did you have a picture of where you were going?
I did. And so, we have a leadership model that actually includes those words, vision and mission. And the idea with it is that when you receive a mission, and we can talk more about, I think, how the mission plays into this concept of freedom with accountability. But the idea is that the leader does develop their vision and has the ability to kind of think long term and envision what it could be and start to make progress towards that vision. And so I definitely did have a vision. And I think one of the important things of that was when we talk about success, I think in publicly traded companies, it's really easy to get caught up with the financials. That's what our shareholders are looking for, and you're constantly asked about the financials. For me, the vision was, is there a way to deliver financial success while also delivering in other areas that help to set this company up to deliver even longer term? And when I talk about that, it's not just measuring the financials, but also customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction, safety, all of these other things that when you think holistically about a company that we want to be around for decades to come, that you want to build the foundation, not just on the financial success, but on these other areas as well. So that was a big part when I thought, what do I want to do in this company? What the vision was. It really had a lot to do with more than just financial success. It was a more holistic approach to defining success and setting a foundation around that for the long term.
Yeah. So break this down for me, because I know that you're asked within your company where peers reach out and say, okay, so how did you do this? I mean, think about it. It's like was it a phased rollout? How did you put this shift into play?
Yeah, it was, so I think one thing in terms of my leadership, I'm not really afraid of not having the full plan ahead of me. I'm comfortable with saying, let's start with a few steps and we'll adjust as we go. So I think that was one part of it. I was comfortable thinking we can start moving this direction without having to have the whole plan. I had the vision, and that was good enough. And I think anytime you start to think about the way I need to do this is going to include a cultural transformation, you really need to assess and be deliberate, because I think a cultural transformation is one of the hardest things to do in business. And so I've been actually working in this company for 25 years. I've been involved in a few cultural transformations, and they're really hard to do. And so I think you have to really assess what's going on and ensure that you understand your current situation and that you're ready to do a cultural transformation. And in this case, when I looked around, there was a lot of good things to start with. We had really committed employees. To this day, I'm always impressed with the level of commitment from the employees that we have in Epiroc USA. They're just incredible. I had a leadership team that was ready for a change. And so the employees were ready for a change, they're committed. The leadership team is ready for a change. And again, not that the company wasn't performing well, but there were definitely some things that weren't working that everybody acknowledged. And so they weren't, the company and the people weren't in denial that things could be better. And so for me, when I saw that, in my mind, it was okay. We're gonna go fast, and so I think you have to really, when you're looking at this, you do have to assess and decide: can I go fast? Are they ready to go fast? And can I set a cadence that we can do quickly, but also that everybody's going to get across the finish line together? And so that assessment was really important. But when we did it, when we spoke as a leadership team for the company, we all agreed that it was better to try to move pretty fast with some of the things. And that included, there was a lot. There was a lot that went into, I'd say, the first 12 months of this transformation. I don't think I would encourage everybody to do as many things as we did in 12 months unless you're really sure that you're ready. But we changed a lot in the first 12 months. And I'll add, during that time, COVID also started. And so we had to make a decision. Do we continue with this transformation that we're doing, or do we need to pump the brakes or make any adjustments? And we actually decided we can still do this. Yes, we're going to be working virtually, but we still know where we need to go. Everybody's still motivated. Everybody's still willing to do it. So we actually pushed right through, despite when COVID came in. So we did a lot in the first year, and then every year there's been steady, I'd say, change and incremental adjustments that go with it.
Yeah. So when you say you changed a lot of things, are you referring to infrastructure, structural technology, kind of reorganization, things like that, or are you talking more about the people side and how things get done? Kind of unpack that changed a lot
Yeah,
in
so
the first 12 months.
we did a restructuring as part of this, and one of the reasons was it was really clear that in the financial results, but also just talking to people, it was really clear that we weren't as efficient or as effective as we could be. And when we looked at what some of the options were, and given that I had a pretty open mandate from our CEO, we were able to be creative in what we thought would be the best way to go forward. And so it did include a restructuring. That was a big change within the company. It challenged a lot of ways that we had been working for decades, really. And so it was a big change, but we agreed to do that. We also agreed, we had some discussions around what kind of culture do we want, and we decided that we had to make some investments in leadership as well. So there was a leadership component and a development component. There was a restructuring component. There was a systems component. When we looked at where some gaps and some enabling things, there were definitely systems component. There was an operations component that went with it in terms of assessing our operations and the way they were working versus how we wanted them to work. as well. So it included, yeah, all of those things, and underlying it was we're also going to be changing the culture of what we do in this company, and really that was around this idea of freedom with accountability. But the problem one of the problems we were really trying to address was silos. This word silos, working in silos, came up over and over and over again, and so one of the big pieces of the change with all of that was really breaking down these silos to the point that they wouldn't be rebuilt. Because I think that's what happens with silos. You break them down and then they start getting rebuilt. And so it was really, how do we break these silos down so that they never show up again? Or if they start to show up, that we break them down before they get too big and the walls are too thick.
Yeah. So one of the things that we discuss on this podcast is focused on from an organizational people culture strategy leadership. I'm curious around what it took, or what was your approach to getting people on board to, because change is for many people, it's a scary thing. Will I be able to do my new job, or who am I going to report to? And it was almost like a Maslow's hierarchy with security out there, at the base. And so how did you get your team, your organization prepared and really on board and motivated to move forward? Was there anything that came to mind? It comes to mind.
Yeah, I think the first thing is, people want to be heard. And so I think if you spend the time and really listen to what's going on, usually you'll pick up on common themes. And I think acknowledging that they're real. And I think that was really important for listening to employees and saying, okay, we're hearing this consistently. This is a problem. And then a big part of this was, we're not going to do this change by Jon Torpy saying, okay, everybody start changing the culture, start with you. That's not how it works. It really was an invitation that we're ready to make a cultural change. This is what we envision it looking like, going from a very siloed approach where there's lack of clarity in missions and how people's work delivers to the final result of the company, to something that has more transparency, more clarity, and more alignment, and really overall more strategic. And I think from there it was really an invitation. Will you come on this journey with me, with us? And that was the approach. And thankfully, again, in the assessment, when talking to people, it was really clear that people were ready for a change. They may not have been able to articulate what change they wanted, but they were already kind of willing to try something different. And so I embraced that, and my leadership team really embraced that and said, okay, we're going to do it. And you know what? We may make some mistakes along the way, but as long as we're speaking openly, we'll know that we made mistakes and we'll work to address them. And so that was really, the way that we did it. And I think when you do this, there's always going to be people that, if you kind of look at the ADKAR model of change or change management, yeah, there's going to be the first people that run in and they're ready to do it. There's going to be some, I don't know, and there's going to be some that just say this isn't for me. And I think when that happens, you do have to be ready to say, look, if this is not the type of culture you want to work in, then maybe you don't want to work here anymore. And I think doing that in an empathetic way, and we did that. We basically said, hey, this culture is going to change, and for some of you, this may not be what you want. And if that's the case, please come and talk to us, and we'll have an open conversation about that. Right? So we had that, and some people did leave the company, but most people actually rushed to be a part of the change and said, I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of helping to create this culture. And we told them it wasn't going to be easy, but there are things that we will do along the way to help get us there.
Yeah.
And so that was the approach. And again, people were ready for the change, so I embraced that as much as I could to take that energy into this type of a change.
So when you were talking about of reaching out, and you spoke about like hearing different perspectives on that, is that where that you had mentioned this stakeholder group? Did you form that as part of this whole initiative?
Did, yeah. So the stakeholder group was part of it. So one of the things we did is, I've worked in organizations where you kind of have a leadership team that's ivory tower, and they're making decisions without really listening to what's going on out there. And so for me, I've never liked that, and so I've always been a little bit more, let's go and see. Let's kind of follow some lean principles and go and see. And the stakeholder group was, we had this idea as we did this change. We said, we're going to be going fast. And Jon Torpy's new. A lot of people don't know Jon Torpy. They do know some of the other leaders. But to go fast, we need to give people a chance to communicate to us through some other channels. And so we invited 25 people from throughout the company. Job title didn't matter. Really, what we wanted was people from all over the company from different roles. And so we wanted a good group of diversity, but we wanted people that we also knew would speak openly to us based on what they were hearing out there, and also that they could communicate outwards if rumors started to pop up. Because I think when you're doing this kind of change, rumors can end up being really poisonous, really dangerous. And so we had this group that we wanted to be completely transparent with what we were going to do. We shared information with them regularly. We shared it with them before we shared with the organization. Said, do you understand this? Do you have questions? And please, as you go out there, go and help us get this message and invite that feedback so we know what's working or what's not working. And so that made a big difference. It was a very different approach for us, but it made a big difference because we had, instead of just the leadership team of voices, we had these 25 other voices that really felt like they could bring what they were hearing and speak openly. And we were able to actually avoid some pitfalls along the way because of that. So that was a big help make a big impact in terms of the speed that we were able to move with some of the changes.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things also too you were talking about is how you set this thing up is you communicated, and it sounds like you communicated consistently that we're going to make some mistakes along the way and we're going to try something and we need to correct. It sounds like the stakeholder group became a bit of that feedback loop for having to redirect on stuff that maybe was not in the right direction, maybe it just didn't work, and then you almost corrected. So they were part of that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I hear that they were part of shaping that future state.
Absolutely, they were involved in a big way. And I'll say, even when, so you asked earlier, did you have a vision? So I had a vision, but, inside my head's a scary place. We have to get that vision out there so that other people can understand it. And so even articulating a vision that we could put in writing for everybody else to see, this is where we want to go. That stakeholder group, even in the creative process of getting the wording right in the vision, they were a part of that. And so they were involved from the very beginning, and that included carrying a heavy burden, which was, we said, hey, we are going to do a restructuring. We are going to lay some people off because we've looked at it and we have too many people. And we're sharing this with you, stakeholder group, and you're going to have to help carry this burden as we go through this, and help us to keep the organization stable and secure as we go through it. So they had a huge piece, along with my leadership team, really important in getting through it successfully. And to this day, they help us with that. But during that year, there was a lot. I mean, we were talking with our stakeholder group and asking what they're hearing a lot. And I think also I mentioned the rumors. They would tell us, hey, this rumor's popping up. And I was able to say, look, you can tell them, you heard directly from Jon Torpy, this is what is going on. The rumor's false. So you can go out there and use that exact wording to help bring stability so that we're not wasting energy on rumors. Things like
so
that.
you really, if you believe that fear is a great headwind on change, particularly organizational cultural change, that you helped sort of the steps that was moving people forward, but you created a sense of, hey, we'll help you along the way, as opposed to just putting it out there and sort of do or die or survive it or not.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was not not the message I'm hearing. You either get on board or not, right? That was not the message.
No, I think you have to be really empathetic to what this kind of change can be for different levels of the company. And again, I've been in the company 25 years, so I've seen a lot of it firsthand. So I think I have a lot in my toolbox of ways that I don't want to do it. So for sure, the idea that this is, if you don't want to change, get out of here, or, it was, if you're a good employee who's committed to this company, you're going to have a place here, and you're going to make an impact on this culture. And this culture, we use this word culture. I think one of my favorite definitions is culture is the sum of our habits. So dear employee, you are a part of this culture. You're a part of this cultural change. It's not just Jon Torpy. You're a part of it. You're a part of it. All of you and the way you show up and the sum of your habits helps to define this culture. So we need all of you to be a part of this. And I think at the same time, Tom, it was really important to build trust, and not that there wasn't trust, but the level of trust that we need to go through this transformation. But then to do what we want to do beyond that transformation, we need trust. And so this is also, as we're doing this, it's really building the foundation of trust. And so we're bringing more transparency than ever before to the employees. And I even said, you're going to see transparency from me. And I don't want you to think transparency is always good news. I want you to know transparency can sometimes be scary, and it can be uncertain, and it can also be really good. But I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to be transparent because I think all of our employees, you're committed, you're mature, you can handle that type of information. And so all of that was part of building trust to the level that we were going to need it to carry us well into the future for the growth of this company.
Yeah, that trust building is huge, as we both well know, as far as creating that trust that we are going to move collectively together into that new frontier. When you were talking about this concept called freedom with accountability, on the surface it seems paradoxical or sort of a polarity. I think about it as a polarity of freedom and accountability, or with accountability. Unpack that a little bit about what do you mean by that? Kind of describe for me what that looks
Yeah,
like.
so I was trying to remember because you and I talked about this a lot, and I don't actually even remember where the words specifically came from,
Yeah.
to be honest. But I think our company has a decentralized structure. So I think inherently in the way that we work, it is decentralized. And so I mentioned earlier, in my role, there's a chance to be entrepreneurial, and there's not a lot of micromanagement. And I think that is definitely one of the strengths of how we work now. So decentralized can also bring some challenges, but big strength, the idea that we push decision making as close to the customers as we can in this example. We have this saying, the person closest to the problem is probably the best one to come up with a solution. So I think all of those things play into this decentralized model that we have. But to really embrace that, you have to take it down to the individual level. Every individual needs to understand that they have a role in this company. They are a piece of the bigger picture, and that we define that piece, and that we then say, I trust you to do something great within your role that helps us do something great as a company. And so I think that's really what it boils down to, is at the individual level that we do that. And the freedom of accountability comes in that we have this Epiroc leadership model, mission, vision, strategy, structure, people, with feedback, with a good feedback loop. That's the model. It's simple, but can also be somewhat complex when you break down each of the steps. But this idea of the mission, most of our employees, they have a job description, and the job description is important, but what's more important is that we give each employee, or most employees, a mission. And that mission is a different type of wording. The mission is set up to articulate, this is what we need you to do. And it doesn't say, and this is how you're going to do it. So it says, this is what we need you to do. Here are the results we're trying to get after. And typically between a manager and the employee, we develop that mission, and that mission cascades down from Jon Torpy to his team down. So the missions all align to deliver the results for the company. But that mission is the first step in saying, dear employee, this is what I'm asking you to do. And we can talk about it, but we want to make sure the mission is clear. Do you understand the mission? Typically, they're written with a time frame over the next 2 years, over the next 3 years. This is what we expect you to do. So it's the what. And then we say, so what I want you to do, dear employee, is go think about that. And it's up to you to decide, how do you want to deliver on that? So that's the freedom. the accountability is that there are expectations, and so we have to deliver these types of results. We have a code of conduct, we have safety, and so there are expectations that go with that as well. So the freedom, it does come with boundaries. It's not like you can do whatever you want, spend as much money, have whatever. The freedom comes with boundaries, and the accountability does come with clear expectations, because we need everybody to do that so that the sum of everybody executing their mission helps us to deliver this great result for the company. And so ideally, that's how we want it to work. It's really easy to do on paper, right? So you do a mission, you hand it over. Right. But for leaders, it requires a huge degree of trust. And I think, really that's what it boils down to, is you really have to extend, dear employee, I trust you. And when things get tough and things get stressful, I still trust you. And I think that's the hardest time, is, when things are easy, people are running and they're really happy and the results are coming. But when things get tough, the leader, the manager, needs to continue to extend that trust with proper coaching to work through the challenge. Mm-hmm. But you also have to ensure that the employee doesn't say, wow, this is really tough. Here's your freedom with accountability back. I don't want it. Just tell me what to do. Right. So I think those are the components that we had to work on, were these nuances, these components, when you want to take it from just words on paper to really living it in the real world every day. And it's something that we have to work on every day. And I think especially, accountability requires feedback, and feedback's really hard to do, especially when the feedback might be when things aren't going so well. And so that idea of feedback is so important, and it doesn't really work if you don't include that feedback loop as well. And so all of those are things that we had to work on, and we still to this day continue to work on them, looking for freedom with accountability as part of our culture.
Yeah, and I'm curious around the accountability part, because we hear about that a lot, that certain organizational cultures are high on the results and accountability, and then there's some that are not as focused on accountability. And it takes a lot of work, as you say, is the feedback loop, it's the coaching. When you talked about setting clear expectations, break that down for me. Do you set expectations for employees like a quarterly, here's the big mission, here's where you're trying to get to, these are some expectations and goals that you have on a quarterly basis, and then you get feedback and hold people accountable to those specific goals? Is that how you break it down, rather than just kind of sort of turning everybody loose for, kind of setting the results and the outcomes are really clear, but there's no sort of touch points along the way, I guess?
Yeah, so part of, structurally, I'll say that we kind of leave it up to managers to decide what is the best way to do that. Okay. But at a minimum, we want to have goals that we can look at the end of the year. Our fiscal year is on a calendar year, and then we can look at the end of the year and say, did we accomplish what we needed to? So we can look beyond a year as well. But I think for when you're going to do this that broadly with employees throughout the company, not everybody can really digest beyond that year mark. And so I'd say that year mark is the most important. And then what we actually do is empower leaders and managers in the organization to decide what is the right cadence and feedback approach that you're going to use to deliver that. And by the way, we don't want to see that everything happened in December. Ideally, right. You set up a way of working where you're making progress throughout the year, and you talk about that. And so we have quarterly results, and so we will use the quarterly results as part of that, and we do monthly reviews as well. Does every employee get that monthly review detail? Not necessarily. I think it's really going to be up to what it is that are in the expectations. And I think what's more important is that the journey starts and that it's moving towards that goal than trying to predict the entire future and say step 1, step 2, step 3. And so we really, that's ideally what we have working, is managers that are working on the relationship that way, thinking about progress towards the goal at a steady pace, versus something else. And again, sometimes it's a little bit messy, sometimes it's really clear, but that's the ambition, is that they're working like that, and having open discussions around, whatever it is. Are we on track? Are we not on track? Are you doing what I need you to do? Those conversations have to be happening consistently, but consistently could be weekly, monthly, once a quarter. I think at least monthly uh, tends to be the most common.
Yeah. And from the freedom with accountability of you're really sort of integrating both. You want entrepreneurial spirit, you want new ways, exploring new ways of how we do the work that we do, and also being held accountable to the outcomes, the results that
Yeah.
you have described and set expectations on that. What has been the hardest part and of implementing that kind of organizational operating system? And what are some of the things where it just hasn't worked? Kind of the failure side of things.
Yeah, I think overall, so we had to redefine leadership in the company, and so we invested a lot in just raising, I'd say, raising the level and the standard of our leadership, and that's not just the management team. We've invested in something like, we have, I don't know, almost 400 employees, and out of that, we've invested in really uh, a really strong and thorough leadership program for around 80 of them. And so, one of the tricks, one of the challenges, is getting this so that it's happening everywhere, every day, without me and my leadership team having to be involved all the time, right? So I think that's one of the challenges. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with how do I do that? How do I get it so the decisions are happening out there and that they're happening within the standards that we expect, moving towards the goals that we have.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of it. And when we started that, we had a couple of pioneers that tested it, and there were jokes that we were drinking the hippy dippy Jon Torpy Kool-Aid with this leadership training, and it was very, we
Yeah.
talked vulnerability and
Yeah.
and empathy and all of these power skills that were kind of missing, but were really important to it. But as people started to see it and see the impact, we actually created a situation where we have more demand than we do capacity now, and so I think it was really tough to do that. You have to be patient as you do this. You have to
Yeah.
understand you're not going to get it all done right away. So you have to have a degree of patience, but you also have to ask a lot of commitment from the employees to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And along the way, as you're doing that, you also have to call out who's really committed to it or not, right? That you can fake it or you can really do it, and it's pretty easy to spot when people are faking it, and you have to have some different conversations with them, and then really, of course, encourage the ones that are embracing it to go out there and do it. And I think at the same time, you have to do a lot of coaching with this type of a journey, and so remembering that we have to make time to be there for employees and to coach them. And so, because we can get so busy with so many things, but really
Yeah.
making that time to be coaches to help employees get there, because things get busy. And so I think all the time we are constantly fighting, firefighting. Like, there is always something that's a burning platform that's going to want us to be very reactive and to go back to this idea of just be siloed and buckle down and do my thing. And so we're constantly having to say, hey, remember, we're breaking down the silos. We're working with collaboration to deliver these goals. And then I think, as we created this culture, as well as other stakeholders came and they work with us, it's a little bit scary, because now, like, we have employees showing up saying, okay, this is how we're going to do it, and da 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 da, and what do you think? And they're inviting collaboration. And so if you're not used to this idea of freedom with accountability, and hey, here's your part of it, you've got a week, go and work on it and come back, it's really scary. And so I think that's the other part, is now, we don't get to just work in a bubble. We work with other organizations internally and externally, and how do you make it work in that environment? And that's been one of the challenges. And the big part is just the trust, making sure that consistently we're working to extend that trust that's needed for freedom with accountability to be more than just words on paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so interesting you were talking, because trust is a thread that is woven throughout this whole journey. And it just popped up this morning. I don't know what the source was about just the trust with managers is as hitting an all-time low. And it's like, it, I think you will attest to this, that it takes a lot of work to extend that trust through the concept of this freedom with accountability, and then trust comes back. It's not waiting for it's a very proactive way to build trust organizationally to help the organization move forward.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that as a thread throughout this
Yeah,
whole.
and I think, look, so I think, why does this happen where there's lower levels of trust with management? And I think really one of the challenges is that management isn't really being honest and acknowledging what's going on. It's a
Okay.
really
Yeah.
hard thing to do, right? As managers, and especially, and this is where I have to give a lot of credit to members of my leadership team. They were here before I came in. I got to be the new guy that says, "Oh, let's change everything," but they were a part of, what was up to that point. And as a manager, to say, you know what, this just isn't working, or they're right, this is broken, or it's true, they don't trust us and we don't understand why, so we need to find out. I think being able to get down to that level and diagnose, okay, what's really going on, and acknowledging it, and instead of blaming it on other things or hiding it, that's the hardest part. And what I think, once you can do that, and of course that's also cultural, that you say, hey, this is, we're okay talking about the really tough things. Once you can do that, then you can figure out what to do about it. But if you can't diagnose what's really leading to it, you will never be able to do it. And so I think sometimes it's really easy as management teams or managers to get caught in this spiral of doing things, but are they the right things to address that? And so we work hard on being able to do that, and trust. You have to earn the trust constantly. And I think there's also this thought that, if you're going to earn trust, you have to always be nice and put on a smile and only share good news. And that's absolutely not true. Our employees are fine with being transparent, even when things are tough, and building trust that way. I think it's better to be genuine and vulnerable and being predictable in being genuine and vulnerable to earn trust than to fake it and pretend like everything's okay and try to earn it that way. And so, so we do spend time on that, just trying to be pretty genuine as leaders, and being as vulnerable as we can, in a workplace environment, to build that trust and to maintain it.
Yeah.
There, that's the challenge, is to maintain and maintain it over the years.
The people that reach out and listen to this podcast are really out there, and oftentimes they're trying to implement new initiatives or trying to take a stand out in front, kind of shift things around as we talk about sort of operate in that above the line operating system. How did you deal with sort of being out there? How did you keep the momentum yourself from a self-leadership perspective? Because it can get lonely out there sometimes. How did you sort of not second guess this trajectory that you were on, and not have a tendency to retreat back?
Yeah, I think, so I think, first of all, if you have a vision, and you're committed to the vision, then I think the best way I can put it, and the discussions I had with my boss were, I think I know how I want to do this, and I have this really strong belief that if you start with people and you build collaborative teams and you work on the culture, everything else will follow. So I really believe in that. Like, for me, I believe in that. I'll acknowledge that I'm not the smartest person in the room. My grades from college will prove that. And I think acknowledging that, but saying, I really do believe that when you have the right people, and they're focused on the right things, and that they want to collaborate, and that you're also working on the culture, and you're trying to consistently build this strong culture and nurture this strong culture, that the results will come. And so for me, I had that belief as part of the vision, and I even told my boss, I said, and you know what, if it doesn't work, then you should probably fire me. Okay, I mean, you have to have that level of belief. And for me, to show up at work every day, that's how I get my energy, is from working that way and seeing people actually becoming a part of it and embracing it, and doing that, and realizing the success. I think that's when you can get just one person who, you don't give them the answer, but you trust them and you say, hey, go think about it, come back, let me know what you think, you coach, and you see that they get there, that gives you a lot of energy. So then scale that and compound it across the organization. And so
Yeah.
for me, that's where I got the energy to do this, and including with my management team who, they're like, wow, this is really working. Employees were saying that. And so that was that part came, and if it didn't work, then I was going to know and say, hey, maybe I'm not the right person for this. And I was okay with that. So I was all in with this idea of this is the culture we're going to build. And if it's not going to be like that, then I'm probably not the right person to lead this company.
Yeah.
And I continue to be all in on that today, right? So if there's a big change and somebody says, no, freedom with accountability no longer exists and we don't want you to do it and things like that, then I'm probably not the right person to lead to lead the company that way.
This has been great, Jon. I can't thank you enough for sharing some of these insights and ideas and practices and whatnot. As we wrap this up, if you were to leave our listeners with that maybe are really trying to maybe even implement a team culture shift. Maybe it's not at the organizational level, but even from a departmental or a team or divisional level, what would be two or three things that you would really say these are the most critical components that need to be part of your leadership to be able to be successful at implementing those cultural microclimate changes? What would you share? What would you share with them?
Yeah, so a couple things, and I'll try to keep them somewhat concise if I can as I think through the question. I
Yeah,
think first of all, when I get this question internally, because as you mentioned earlier, there are people that come and say, "How did you do it?"
yeah,
Um, the first thing I try to understand is what is it you're really trying to do? What problem are you really trying to solve? What opportunity are you chasing? And I always start with that because there are so many times that I realize that the diagnosis wasn't done. Our brains are programmed to jump to the first solution that pops in, and if we have groupthink, there's all these things that can happen there.
yeah,
And so I really encourage, and I will be when it comes. I'm probably annoyingly provocative in my questions when they come to me in asking what is it that you're trying to change, why, and digging into what's really going on, and being that challenger around making sure that they really understand what it is they're trying to do and why. And I think one of the most dangerous responses that I will hear, and it'll be a red flag, is, well, my boss told me that we should do this change. Okay. Already, if your boss told you and you don't believe in it, then already you need to pump the brakes and say, hold on a sec. Okay. That like, I think that already is setting a path that I'm not going to say it'll be failure, but it's definitely not going to be the level of success. And then the other things then I talk about with them is, are you really ready to do the hard work based on what that assessment may tell you? And so if that assessment tells you that your managers aren't showing up the right way, are you ready to do the hard work with your managers rather than saying, oh, well, that's just because of these people? So are you really ready to do the hard work? So with those two questions, this gets filtered down to who really is ready to do some of these types of changes. You can really get into who's really. And so I'd say for those listening, do that self-assessment, and beware the pitfalls that many managers are aware of, groupthink, biases that show up. Challenge those as much as you can to make sure you really diagnosed and that you really then understand where the work has to be done, so you're putting the energy into the right place. And then the third piece is to make sure that you are doing it with people. Everybody says people make it happen, but are you doing the things to really make your employees a part of it? Right. It's one thing to do a quarterly update in a PowerPoint and just do that. It's another thing to go spend time with them, to listen. I'll even share, and I know this probably goes a little bit longer, but even the way we do strategy is not management team down. The way we do strategy, even without going into too much detail, invites any employee who thinks they can help it be better to be a part of our strategic activities. So even that involvement of the employees, and encouraging them to try something new, knowing that you'll be there for them in service of building that culture, but also in service of the long-term goals and ambitions. So does that make sense? That
Yeah,
third one is a
totally
little bit
makes
longer, so I
sense.
just want to make sure it makes sense.
And you're absolutely right. What I heard from that is you've got to be close to the action. You've got to be out there in the field, not just really sort of leading this from sort of with your management team behind sort of in that ivory tower, not to use a overused cliche, but or metaphor. You've got to be out there really gathering feet. It's an iterative process. And it's not just a flip the switch.
Yeah, and it is,
And it
for us,
requires work. Yeah.
It's the long game as well,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we don't, somebody once said, somebody once asked me, well, what's the difference between the long-term strategy and the short-term strategy? And the answer is, well, the long-term strategy is a bunch of short-term strategy executed well. So, that's how we look at it. And so we always do consider the long-term and the short-term. And it never stops, in a publicly traded company, especially, it never stops. You're constantly thinking, okay, what can we do better? And it never stops. And you want to have the organization to do that, and Tom, one thing we did, and you'll start to find these things that they don't show up as really exciting, but they become really important, in freedom with accountability. Some people don't want to be a part of that. And we realized that as we were doing this, we're like, wow, the places that it's not working is where we hired people that don't want to be a part of this. And then we looked all the way back at our recruitment process and said, what are we doing in our recruitment process to make sure that we're hiring people that want freedom with accountability? So we went all the way back and changed. We had a strategic initiative to change our recruitment process to make sure we were bringing the right types of people into the company that would succeed with this. So those are the things I talked about when you're diagnosing what's going on. Nobody had thought about that at all before. And it wasn't, I didn't think about it either. But when we started really speaking openly about what was going on and where things didn't work, we're like, yeah, but we're not even asking people if they like freedom with accountability. No wonder we hired people that don't want it. And so we had to go all the way back in our recruitment process and change that as well to make sure we were bringing people into the company that wanted to work that way. And, Tom, I'll close, in terms of, we talked about everything that we did. What were the results? And I can say from the work that we've done, and we realize these results year over year, I think anybody can have a one-hit wonder and have 1 year. But so we talk financials. Our financials improved a lot. I can say that. Our safety improved dramatically, which was so important in the industries that we work in. Our customer satisfaction improved a lot, and our employee satisfaction improved. So holistically, by doing these things, we created a more, I think, our idea, the vision that you asked about at the beginning, that holistic definition of success came true. We accomplished it, and we continue to accomplish it year over year. Again, this started in 2019. We continue to accomplish it year over year. So it is definitely worth the work when you do it the right way to have that type of a result.
Thank you, Jon. A great discussion. So appreciative of you sharing your key learnings and best practices around how you and your leadership team have really taken Epiroc USA to where you are today on this transformational journey. So thank you for that. I jotted down a few items that I thought were notable that I wanted to just share with our listeners. The first one was that I really liked how you were very clear up front in setting the stage that you didn't really know what this course was going to look like. You didn't know what the exact path was, but what you did know for sure was that you'd be making mistakes and failures along the way, and that the organization needed to be better at adjusting, pivoting, shifting, and avoid falling into that trap of blame, which a lot of times that happens. And I thought that was really a good message to set the table right from the start. The second thing I jotted down was the importance of staying close to employees, that you set up these feedback loops and your leaders were asking for feedback on a regular basis. And you had that stakeholder group, which was a formal feedback system to help you kind of be in tune with what's working and not working and address some of the rumors before they got out of control. And then the last thing that you mentioned was you talked about how you sent that consistent message that We're not going back to the way that it was, that we are focused on the future, and that, so to speak, kind of burning the ships. We're not going back. We're going to keep going forward. And that consistent message played a big part in keeping that forward momentum. And so thank you for these great ideas. So appreciative. And to all of you out there, I am Tom Athener with the StarQuest Group, and it's been a pleasure to host another Leader to Leader podcast. And as always, just a quick reminder, it does matter how you show up each and every day. So go out and lead with courage, authenticity, and humility. See you next time.